to the 27th Hayley-Roxanna Crafts quick cross stitch video, where I share information, hints and tips on one area of cross stitch in a short video. In this video I am focusing on Aida fabric. Aida, or Aida fabric, you can pronounce it either way, is one of three main fabrics used for cross stitching. It is an open weave fabric, giving it a regular grid of squares with relatively large holes in the corners, making it ideal for cross stitching. It is usually made of 100% cotton and has a natural stiffness that means you do not have to use an embroidery hoop when stitching on it. There are lots of different brands of Aida fabric, as well as unbranded ones, some of which you can see here. There is no right or wrong one to use. It is purely down to personal preference, and that can change project to project. Some fabrics are softer than others. Some will have larger holes, so it's just down to what you like and the effect you are trying to achieve with your finished piece. Whilst white Aida fabric is probably the most commonly used, it is also available in a whole variety of colours. You can also buy patterned Aida fabric, like this one. There's a whole wide variety of different ones available. Stitching designs on different colours can change the finished effect. To show you this, I have my watercolour alphabet stitched on white Aida fabric here, and I also have my name banner, which is stitched on black Aida fabric, and this is using exactly the same letters as I used in this design. I might have changed the colours of some, but the E, for example, I didn't. I've done exactly the same colours, and you can see it gives you a different effect depending on the colour of the fabric you are stitching on. Another difference between these two cross stitches that you may have noticed is that they are stitched on different counts of fabric. The letters are different sizes. So the banner was on 14 count, and when I stitched the whole alphabet, I stitched it on 16 count. So what is meant by the count of the fabric? Well, this refers to the number of squares per inch of fabric. So this fabric is 11 count, as there are 11 squares per inch of fabric. This is 14 count, as there are 14 squares per inch of fabric. This one is 16 count. It gets harder to show you as the counts are smaller, but there are 16 squares per inch of fabric. And then this one is 18 count, which means there are 18 squares per inch of fabric. "14 count is probably the most commonly used count, but again, it comes down to personal preference and the finished effect you want, as to which one you should use. Most designers will suggest a count to use to achieve the same effect as they have for particular designs, but this does not mean you can't use a different count if you would prefer. The main thing you need to consider when deciding on which count to use is how it will affect the size of your finished cross stitch. The higher the count number, the smaller the finished cross stitch will be. So if you stitch the same design on a 14 count and an 18 count, the 18 count one will be smaller when you've finished. If you want to calculate the size of a finished cross stitch on a particular count, you just need to divide the number of stitches across and down by the count. So for this design, there are 38 stitches across and down. So if this was stitched on 14 count, the finished design would be approximately 2.7 inches square. So 38 divided by the 14 is about 2.7. But on 18 count, it would be approximately 2.1 inches square. If you are new to cross stitching, I would advise trying different brands and different counts of Aida fabric to find your own preferences. I tend to use DMC or Hobbycraft fabric in 14 or 16 count most often, although I would say 16 count is probably my preference. If you have any questions about Aida fabric, please pop them in the comments. In the next quick cross stitch video, I will discuss even weave fabric.